The morning was cold and gray, with a light drizzle falling over the small-town cemetery. The air smelled of wet grass and earth, and the only sound was the soft rustling of leaves in the wind. A man in his late 40s, Thomas Carter, stood at the entrance of the cemetery, his hands trembling as he clutched a bouquet of white lilies. His brother, Ethan Carter, had been gone for 5 years, but the pain of his loss still felt fresh, like an open wound that refused to heal. Thomas took a deep breath and walked slowly toward Ethan's grave. The headstone was simple, with Ethan's name and the dates of his short life etched into the stone. Thomas knelt down, placing the flowers gently in front of the grave. His voice was barely a whisper as he spoke. "I miss you, Ethan, every single day." As he stood there, lost in his thoughts, he heard footsteps behind him. He turned around and saw his 16-year-old daughter, Lily, standing a few feet away. Her eyes were red as if she had been crying, and her hands were stuffed into the pockets of her jacket. Thomas was surprised to see her there. Lily had never visited Ethan's grave before. In fact, she rarely spoke about her uncle. "Lily, what are you doing here?" Thomas asked, his voice filled with concern. Lily didn't answer right away. She walked closer to the grave, her eyes fixed on the headstone. When she finally spoke, her voice was soft but steady. "I wanted to see him. I wanted to say goodbye." Thomas felt a lump form in his throat. He had no idea why Lily had decided to come here today, but he could see the pain in her eyes. Something was troubling her, something deep and unresolved. The two of them stood there in silence for a while, the rain falling gently around them. Thomas wanted to ask Lily what was wrong, but he didn't know how to start. Instead, he reached out and placed a hand on her shoulder, hoping to offer some comfort. Little did he know, this visit to Ethan's grave would be the beginning of a journey that would change their lives forever. Lily sat down on the damp grass, her knees pulled close to her chest. Thomas hesitated for a moment before sitting beside her. The rain had stopped, but the sky remained overcast, casting a somber mood over the cemetery. For a long time, neither of them spoke. The silence between them was heavy, filled with unspoken words and emotions. Finally, Thomas broke the silence. "Lily, why today? You've never come here before. What's going on?" Lily stared at the ground, her fingers tracing patterns in the wet grass. She took a deep breath as if gathering the courage to speak. "Dad, I've been having dreams about Uncle Ethan. They're so real, like he's right there with me. And in the dreams he's trying to tell me something, but I can't understand what it is." Thomas felt a chill run down his spine. He had never heard Lily talk about Ethan like this before. "What kind of dreams?" he asked gently. "They're not scary or anything," Lily said quickly, as if sensing his concern. "It's more like he's trying to help me. But every time I wake up I feel this sadness, like there's something I'm supposed to do, but I don't know what." Thomas looked at his daughter, his heart aching for her. He had always tried to shield Lily from the pain of Ethan's death, but now he realized that maybe he had made a mistake. Maybe she needed to talk about it, to understand what had happened. "Lily," he said softly, "your Uncle Ethan he was a good man. He loved you so much. But he had his struggles, and sometimes those struggles got the better of him. I wish I could have done more to help him." Lily looked up at her father, her eyes filled with tears. "Dad, why didn't you ever talk to me about him? Why did we never visit his grave together?" Thomas sighed, feeling the weight of his own guilt. "I thought it would be too hard for you. I didn't want you to feel the pain that I felt, but maybe I was wrong. Maybe we both needed to face this together." Lily nodded, wiping her tears with the back of her hand. "I think Uncle Ethan wants us to remember him, Dad. Not just the bad parts, but the good parts, too. I think he wants us to forgive him." Thomas felt a lump in his throat. Forgiveness. It was something he had struggled with for years. He had always blamed himself for Ethan's death, wondering if he could have done something to prevent it. But now, sitting here with Lily, he realized that maybe it was time to let go of that guilt. "Maybe you're right, Lily," he said, his voice trembling. "Maybe it's time we both forgive him, and ourselves." As they sat together by Ethan's grave, Lily reached into her jacket pocket and pulled out a folded piece of paper. It was old and slightly crumpled, as if it had been tucked away for years. She held it in her hands for a moment, hesitating, before handing it to her father. "I found this in the attic last week," she said quietly. "It's from Uncle Ethan. I think he wrote it for you." Thomas's heart skipped a beat as he took the letter. His hands shook as he unfolded it, and his eyes scanned the familiar handwriting. It was Ethan's, no doubt about it. The words were written in a hurried scrawl, as if Ethan had been in a rush when he wrote them. "Dear Thomas, if you're reading this, it means I'm gone. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry for everything. I never meant to hurt you or Lily. I couldn't see a way out. The darkness was too much, and I didn't know how to ask for help. But I need you to know something. You were the best brother I could have ever asked for. You were always there for me, even when I didn't deserve it. And Lily, she's the light of my life. I hope you'll tell her how much I loved her, even if I wasn't always there to show it. Please don't blame yourself for what happened. This was my choice and mine alone. I just hope that one day you and Lily can find peace. I hope you can forgive me. Love always, Ethan." Tears streamed down Thomas's face as he finished reading the letter. He had spent years carrying the weight of Ethan's death, blaming himself for not seeing the signs, for not being able to save him. But now, holding Ethan's words in his hands, he felt a strange sense of relief. It was as if Ethan was speaking to him from beyond the grave, offering him the closure he had been searching for. Lily watched her father carefully, her own eyes filled with tears. "I didn't know if I should give it to you," she admitted. "I thought it might make things harder. But after the dreams, I felt like he wanted you to see it." Thomas reached out and pulled Lily into a tight hug. "Thank you," he whispered. "Thank you for giving this to me. I think I needed to see it." For the first time in years, Thomas felt a glimmer of hope. The letter had opened a door that had been closed for too long, and he knew that he and Lily had a long journey ahead of them. But for now, they sat together by Ethan's grave, holding on to each other in the memory of the man they had both loved. After reading the letter, Thomas and Lily stayed by Ethan's grave for a while longer, the silence between them now filled with a sense of connection rather than distance. The clouds began to part, and a faint ray of sunlight broke through, casting a warm glow over the cemetery. It felt like a sign, as if Ethan was there with them, encouraging them to move forward. Thomas wiped his tears and looked at Lily. "Do you remember the time your Uncle Ethan took you to the park when you were little?" he asked, a small smile forming on his lips. Lily thought for a moment, then nodded. "Yeah, I think so. He pushed me on the swings, right? And then we got ice cream." "That's right," Thomas said, his voice soft with nostalgia. "You were so small and he was so patient with you. He always had a way of making people feel special. He loved making you laugh." Lily smiled faintly, her eyes distant as she tried to recall more memories. "I remember he used to tell me stories too, silly ones about dragons and knights. I always begged him to tell me more." Thomas chuckled. "He had a wild imagination. When we were kids, he used to make up these elaborate adventures for us. We'd pretend we were explorers searching for hidden treasure in the backyard. He made everything feel like an adventure." As they talked, more memories began to surface, happy ones that had been buried under years of grief and guilt. Thomas told Lily about the time Ethan had stayed up all night helping him study for a big exam, even though he had work the next morning. Lily shared how Ethan had taught her to ride a bike, running alongside her until she finally got the hang of it. For the first time in years, they weren't just mourning Ethan's death. They were celebrating his life. They laughed and cried, their voices mingling with the sound of birds chirping in the distance. It was as if Ethan's spirit was there with them, reminding them of the joy he had brought into their lives. But as the sun began to set, casting long shadows over the cemetery, Thomas felt a pang of sadness. "I wish he could see you now, Lily," he said quietly. "You've grown into such an amazing young woman. He would be so proud of you." Lily leaned her head on her father's shoulder. "I think he can see us, Dad. I think he's always been watching over us." Thomas nodded, his heart swelling with love for his daughter. You're right. And I think he's happy that we're finally talking about him. It's like he's been waiting for this. As they stood up to leave, Thomas felt a sense of peace he hadn't felt in years. The visit to Ethan's grave had been painful, but it had also been healing. And as they walked away, hand in hand, he knew that this was just the beginning of their journey toward healing and forgiveness. When Thomas and Lily returned home, the house felt different, lighter, as if a heavy fog had lifted. Thomas suggested they look through some old photo albums, hoping to keep the momentum of their healing journey going. Lily agreed, her curiosity piqued. They sat together on the living room floor, surrounded by dusty albums and boxes of photographs. Thomas opened the first album, its pages yellowed with age. The first photo was of Thomas and Ethan as children, standing in front of a Christmas tree with wide grins on their faces. Ethan was holding a toy truck, his eyes sparkling with excitement. "Look at him," Thomas said, his voice warm with affection. "He was always so full of energy, even as a kid. He could turn the simplest thing into an adventure." Lily smiled, tracing the edges of the photo with her finger. "You guys look so happy." "We were," Thomas said. "We had our fights, like all siblings do, but we were always close. He was my best friend." As they flipped through the pages, more memories came to life. There were photos of family vacations, birthday parties, and holidays, each one capturing a moment of joy and connection. Lily pointed to a photo of herself as a toddler sitting on Ethan's shoulders. "I remember this," she said, her eyes lighting up. "He used to carry me around like this all the time. I felt like I was on top of the world." Thomas laughed. "He loved doing that. He used to say you were his little princess." They continued to sift through the photos, each one sparking a new story or memory. But then, tucked between the pages of an old album, Lily found a folded piece of paper. She opened it carefully, revealing a drawing of a stick figure family: a man, a woman, a little girl, and a tall figure with a big smile. At the bottom, in childish handwriting, were the words, "My Family" by Lily Carter, age 6. Thomas's breath caught in his throat as he looked at the drawing. "I remember this," he said softly. "You made this for Ethan. He kept it on his fridge for years." Lily's eyes filled with tears. "I didn't know he kept it. I thought he didn't care about stuff like that." "He cared more than you know," Thomas said, his voice thick with emotion. "He loved you so much, Lily. He didn't always know how to show it." Lily held the drawing close to her chest as if trying to hold on to the memory of her uncle. "I wish I could have helped him," she whispered. "I wish I could have done something." Thomas reached out and took her hand. "We all wish that, Lily. But the truth is, Ethan's struggles were his own. We can't change the past, but we can honor his memory by remembering the good times, by keeping his spirit alive." Lily nodded, wiping her tears. "I want to do that, Dad. I want to remember him the way he was in these photos, happy and full of life." Thomas smiled, his heart swelling with pride. "Then that's what we'll do. We'll keep his memory alive, together." As they closed the photo albums and put them away, Thomas felt a renewed sense of purpose. The pain of Ethan's loss would always be there, but now it was accompanied by something else. Hope. Hope that they could heal. Hope that they could move forward, and hope that Ethan's love would always be a part of their lives. The days that followed were filled with a quiet but profound change. Thomas and Lily began to talk more openly about Ethan, sharing stories and memories that had been buried for years. It wasn't always easy. There were moments of sadness and tears, but with each conversation they felt a little lighter, a little freer. One evening, as they sat together on the porch watching the sunset, Thomas turned to Lily. "There's something I need to do," he said, his voice steady but filled with emotion. "I need to forgive Ethan, and I need to forgive myself." Lily looked at him, her eyes wide with understanding. "I think that's what he wanted, Dad. I think that's why he wrote the letter." Thomas nodded. "I've been carrying this guilt for so long, wondering what I could have done differently. But the truth is, Ethan made his own choices. And as much as I wish I could have saved him, I know now that it wasn't my fault." Lily reached out and took his hand. "It's not your fault, Dad. And it's not my fault either. We did the best we could with what we knew at the time." Thomas felt a surge of love for his daughter. She was wise beyond her years, and her words brought him a sense of peace he hadn't felt in a long time. "You're right, Lily. We did the best we could. And now, we need to let go of the guilt and hold on to the love." The next morning, Thomas and Lily returned to Ethan's grave. This time they brought with them a small wooden box filled with mementos, photos the drawing Lily had made as a child, and a copy of Ethan's letter. They placed the box at the base of the headstone, a symbol of their love and forgiveness. Thomas knelt down and placed his hand on the cold stone. "Ethan," he said, his voice trembling but clear, "I forgive you. And I forgive myself. I hope you've found peace, wherever you are. And I hope you know how much we love you." Lily stood beside him, her hand resting on his shoulder. "We'll never forget you, Uncle Ethan," she said softly. "You'll always be a part of our family." As they stood there, a gentle breeze swept through the cemetery, rustling the leaves and carrying with it a sense of calm. It felt like Ethan's presence, a final goodbye and a reminder that love never truly dies. The weeks turned into months, and life slowly began to settle into a new rhythm for Thomas and Lily. The pain of Ethan's loss didn't disappear, but it became easier to carry. They had found a way to honor his memory while also moving forward, and it brought them closer than ever. One Saturday morning, Thomas suggested they do something special. "Let's take a trip," he said over breakfast. "Just the two of us, somewhere we've never been before." Lily's eyes lit up. "Where should we go?" Thomas smiled. "How about the mountains? Ethan always loved the mountains. He used to say they made him feel free." Lily nodded eagerly. "That sounds perfect." They packed their bags and set off early the next morning, the car filled with laughter and conversation. As they drove through winding roads and lush forests, Thomas felt a sense of excitement he hadn't felt in years. It was as if they were embarking on a new adventure, one that Ethan would have loved. When they reached their destination, a small cabin nestled in the mountains, they spent the day hiking, exploring, and taking in the breathtaking views. As the sun began to set, they sat together on a rocky outcrop, watching the sky turn shades of orange and pink. "Dad," Lily said after a long silence, "do you think Uncle Ethan would be proud of us?" Thomas put his arm around her shoulders and pulled her close. "I know he would be, Lily. He'd be proud of how strong we've been, how we've learned to forgive and heal. And he'd be proud of you, of the kind, compassionate person you've become." Lily smiled, her eyes shining with tears. "I think he'd be proud of you too, Dad. You've been so brave." Thomas felt a lump in his throat. "We've come a long way, haven't we?" "Yeah," Lily said softly. "And I think this is just the beginning." As they sat there, watching the stars appear one by one in the night sky, Thomas felt a deep sense of gratitude. The journey had been painful, but it had also brought them closer together. They had faced their grief, forgiven the past, and found a way to move forward. And through it all, Ethan's love had remained a guiding light, reminding them of the power of family and the strength of the human spirit. When they returned home a few days later, Thomas and Lily felt renewed. They had honored Ethan's memory in the best way they knew how, by living their lives with love, forgiveness, and hope. And as they stepped back into their everyday lives, they knew that Ethan would always be with them, a part of their hearts forever.
Subscribe and press the bell icon so that you never miss the amazing video.